Arjun Malhotra was a quiet Indian security guard. Veronica Westwood was a glamorous Beverly Hills billionaire. Their worlds should never have collided, but when they did, it sparked a secret romance that spiraled into obsession, betrayal, and ultimately, murder. In 2018, Arjun Malhotra stepped off a plane at Los Angeles International Airport with a single suitcase and a head full of hopes. Back in his hometown in northern India, he had grown up surrounded by hardship. His father had worked long shifts in a textile mill, while his mother managed the household with whatever little money came in. Arjun dreamed of more than just survival. He wanted a life that offered respect, dignity, and a chance to prove himself. America seemed like the land where all of that could finally come true. After weeks of searching, he found work as a security guard in Beverly Hills. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Each day, he stood at the gates of mansions that looked more like palaces, keeping watch over the lives of people so wealthy that their routines seemed almost unreal. Expensive cars glided past him, parties spilled with champagne and music, and guests arrived in designer clothes that cost more than Arjun's yearly salary. He was always present, yet always invisible, the man in the uniform who blended into the background. Despite the glamour around him, Arjun lived modestly. He rented a small room in an aging apartment complex on the edge of the city. He sent money back home to his parents, careful not to spend too much on himself. The nights were long and often lonely, but he held on to his dream that one day he would rise above this quiet existence. Everything changed on a mild summer evening when his post took him to the estate of Veronica Westwood. She was unlike anyone he had ever encountered, elegant, commanding, and dripping with the kind of wealth he could barely imagine. In that instant, the invisible guard had finally been seen. Veronica Westwood had lived in luxury for decades, yet her life was lonelier than most imagined. After her husband's sudden death, she filled her days with charity galas, exclusive luncheons, and carefully staged appearances in glossy magazines. Beneath the polished image, however, was a woman consumed by silence. Nights inside her sprawling glass mansion were long and hollow, each room echoing with memories of a life that no longer existed. For someone surrounded by admirers, she had no one she truly trusted. Arjun entered her world by chance, but his presence grew into something she craved. It began innocently enough. She would stop to thank him as he opened her gates, ask small questions about his night shifts, and compliment the way he carried himself. Unlike the sycophants who orbited her, he seemed uninterested in her wealth. His reserved nature intrigued her, and soon, what was once casual politeness turned into late-night conversations under the dim lights of her driveway. The secrecy of their encounters only heightened the intensity. Veronica found herself inviting him inside after midnight, where the glow of chandeliers reflected off crystal glasses and marble floors. They spoke for hours, sharing stories from their very different worlds. She was captivated by his discipline, his sharp mind, and his refusal to treat her like a trophy. For Arjun, the thrill of being wanted by a woman of her stature was irresistible. But Beverly Hills thrived on appearances, and whispers began to circulate. A housekeeper noticed shoes by the bedroom door that didn't belong to Veronica. A neighbor spotted Arjun's modest car parked outside overnight. In a community where every detail was scrutinized, their affair was a secret too fragile to remain hidden for long. What had begun as forbidden romance was already drifting toward dangerous territory. As months passed, the affair that once felt like an escape began to reveal its cracks. Veronica's infatuation with Arjun deepened into something more consuming. She had spent years surrounded by opportunists, and now she believed she had found a man untouched by greed. To keep him close, she showered him with gifts, an expensive watch, tailored suits, and envelopes of cash pressed discreetly into his hands. At first, Arjun resisted, embarrassed by the extravagance, but slowly he allowed himself to accept them. What harm could it do, he told himself, if it made her happy? The line between affection and possession soon blurred. Veronica grew restless whenever Arjun was not by her side. She began demanding more of his time, insisting he quit his job and move into her mansion. Her loneliness had turned into dependency, and she wanted him under her roof, within reach at all times. Arjun, however, feared being trapped. He valued his independence, and the thought of relying solely on her unsettled him. This resistance only fueled her suspicions. When Veronica discovered that Arjun had been casually seeing a younger woman on the side, her obsession hardened into fury. She felt humiliated, convinced that her wealth and influence should have secured his loyalty. Friends noticed her behavior shift. The once glamorous hostess, known for her dazzling presence, now appeared distracted and on edge. She spoke less of her charities and more of betrayal. Arjun, meanwhile, began to feel suffocated. What had started as a secret thrill now felt like a cage closing in. He considered ending things but feared the consequences. Veronica held the power, not only with her money but with her influence in Beverly Hills. What he didn't realize was that the relationship had already crossed into dangerous territory, where jealousy and desperation could lead to something irreversible. On a November night in 2020, dark clouds gathered over Los Angeles, and rain streaked down the windows of Veronica Westwood's mansion. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Veronica had summoned Arjun after midnight, and neighbors later recalled hearing loud music echoing from her estate long after the storm had begun. No one suspected that the night would end in tragedy. What occurred behind the locked doors of the mansion was pieced together only later by investigators. Veronica, consumed by jealousy and anger, confronted Arjun about his growing distance. She had discovered hints of his divided attention and demanded answers. To her, their relationship was not a passing fling but a bond she believed should define the rest of her life. For Arjun, the weight of her demands had become unbearable. The argument spiraled, voices rising above the thunder outside. By morning, the grand house had fallen silent. Veronica failed to appear at a charity event, something she never missed. Her assistant, alarmed by the absence, alerted the police. Officers entered the mansion and found a chilling scene. Veronica lay lifeless on her bedroom floor, a silk scarf wound tightly around her neck. Though the room had been staged to suggest a break-in, nothing of value was missing. Jewelry remained untouched. The staging felt clumsy, almost desperate. The most damning evidence came from the estate's high-tech surveillance system. Footage revealed Arjun entering the property at 11:47 p.m., his figure clearly visible as he walked through the gates. Hours passed, but he was never seen leaving. The image of him crossing that threshold would become central to the case. What was once a forbidden love story had now turned into a crime scene, its details written in shadows and silence. Detectives quickly began to piece together the final hours of Veronica Westwood's life, and all trails seemed to lead back to Arjun Malhotra. At first, he cooperated, insisting he had left the mansion while Veronica was still alive. But his version of events fell apart under scrutiny. Phone records placed him inside the neighborhood hours after he claimed to have left. His fingerprints were found on the silk scarf used in the killing, and his car had been captured by nearby traffic cameras parked near the estate long past midnight. The biggest twist in the investigation came when lawyers uncovered a recent change to Veronica's will. Just weeks before her death, she had quietly rewritten it, leaving millions of dollars and valuable assets to Arjun. To prosecutors, this document painted a clear picture: a man with modest means who saw an opportunity to inherit wealth beyond imagination. They argued that greed, combined with fear of losing Veronica's support, gave him a powerful motive to silence her forever. But defense attorneys pushed back. They portrayed Arjun as a victim of a dangerous obsession, a working-class immigrant drawn into a world he could not control. They claimed Veronica's intensity had overwhelmed him and that others with access to the mansion might have staged the scene to frame him. Still, circumstantial evidence mounted against him. The surveillance footage, the fingerprints, the rewritten will, it all built a story too difficult for the jury to ignore. The case gripped the public. News outlets splashed Arjun's face across headlines, labeling him everything from a manipulative seducer to a tragic pawn. For weeks, Beverly Hills buzzed with speculation. Was this the story of a man who killed for fortune, or a romance poisoned by power and obsession? The trial would decide his fate. In 2022, after months of courtroom battles, the trial of Arjun Malhotra reached its climax. Spectators filled every seat, eager to witness the outcome of a case that had captivated the country. Prosecutors painted him as a man who allowed greed to eclipse his conscience, seducing a vulnerable woman before ultimately silencing her. They highlighted the evidence: the scarf with his prints, the surveillance footage, and the rewritten will that positioned him to inherit a fortune. To the jury, it was a portrait of betrayal fueled by ambition. The defense tried to shift the narrative. They described Arjun as a lonely immigrant overwhelmed by the advances of a wealthy and powerful woman. They argued that his relationship with Veronica had become a prison, one that suffocated him with expectations he never sought. Their closing statements suggested that others might have wanted Veronica gone, perhaps for financial gain, but they could not provide proof strong enough to sway the court. After only 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict, guilty of second-degree murder. Arjun was sentenced to 25 years to life in a California state prison. Gasps echoed through the room as the decision was read. Some believed justice had finally been served, while others whispered that the truth was more complicated, hidden beneath layers of obsession, wealth, and secrecy. The Westwood mansion now sits abandoned, its glass walls reflecting only emptiness. Locals say the once vibrant estate feels cursed, its silence heavier than the storm that claimed its mistress. For those who followed the case, the story endures as a cautionary tale, a reminder that passion mixed with power can turn deadly. The legacy of the security guard and the billionaire is not one of romance, but of a love story twisted into tragedy.